Hello, everyone. Welcome to the HockeyBuzzcast. Sorry for the little delay. My fault today. We're going to jump in on, if it isn't always my fault, which I know it is. So let's just jump in. I saw Spider-Man last night. We were talking about that before. I did see Spider-Man last night, which I really liked. It was fun. It was a lot of fun. More fun than I thought it would be. Very, very silly.
Yeah, it was definitely better than I thought it would be, too.
Yeah, it was really good.
Well, isn't it the fact that there were low expectations going in? Because I saw the preview, and other than the fact that Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man was in it, it looked pretty weak.
No.
And then, I mean, the preview did. I'm not disputing the fact that you guys thought it was good, and I'll go see it. But yeah. I thought the preview was almost purposely, let's lower expectations here and then surprise everybody.
I think the whole thing is that you do have to get used to the fact that this is a kid. Like that's the thing. That's the thing.
Went back further than the others did.
Yeah, and I think that's what really plays into the whole, even the preview of like the fact that this is a kid doing this. So
yeah,
he is irresponsible and he's goofy and he's and there's a lot, and there's a lot that comes through. Like Spider-Man is like the comedic relief of the Marvel universe too,
yes.
Right? So that's his thing. So this is definitely a goofier Avengers movie. I mean, it's not like. And there are moments when it's really kind of, it gets a little bit crazy. There's a couple really good twists in it though that surprised me.
And I can tell you the Queen stuff was accurate, and that was good because really none of the other Spider-Man ever really went back to his Queen's roots like this one did, and they did actually show a lot of Queens, which was cool.
Yeah, that was cool. I saw that too.
Well,
yeah,
okay.
But then you saw Dunkirk last night.
Yeah, I mean, completely different movie. Although I have to say, before I talk about Dunkirk, there was a preview for the Justice League movie that's coming out, and following on Wonder Woman, which apparently is still breaking records in terms of like deep in its run, still making ridiculously good amounts of money. This looked pretty good, and believe me, I didn't like Batman versus Superman: Dawn of Justice. I didn't like the first Superman movie, and I haven't seen Wonder Woman yet, but this looked pretty good. I will give that one a chance. But Dunkirk, for those of you who don't know, it's a World War II movie. It's about the evacuation of the British troops that were fighting the Nazis in 1940. And really, the guy who directed it is Christopher Nolan, and he is a master sort of psychological tension when it comes to like music and stop it, Russ. And it's for those of you who are not into war movies, it's actually a really good movie because I think it sort of it interests you in that way. The music brings the tension, the story brings the tension. It's really, really good.
Seems exciting.
Oh, shit.
Talking, I mean, just seeing interviews with the people the veterans they brought in who were actually there, that was something. That was pretty impressive. Like, they just all say that it really feels exactly like it did, which is hard to pull off, but they said actually louder than it was. I mean, that's one thing they all said. These are old guys, but they're all like, it's much louder than I remember it, but it was the same kind of emotions.
Well, seeing it in the IMAX, I took a friend and her son to the movie, and it was the first time at the IMAX, and when there's a scene where one of the Spitfire fighters strafes or goes over the beach, and it literally they jumped out of their seat because IMAX is so loud. Yeah. To me that's what makes the movie. I love loud movies. I think they're exciting.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, awesome. All right, cool. Let's get going on this show. We got some signings to talk about here.
Yes.
All right,
Jan, you follow me.
Okie dokie.
All right, here we go. Hello, Hockey World. It's Monday, July 24th, 2017. I'm
Michael Agello.
I'm Jan Levine.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Eklund. You're watching the HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday at this time to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. And we come to you all year long, including the summer months when things are a little bit slower and we have to talk about Johnny Oduya signing. But besides that, we do have some other fun things to get into here today. But we do have a couple signings. I guess he's not actually the biggest signing of today. It turned out to be the Brian Dumoulin signing.
Brian Dumoulin.
I was calling Dumoulin. Sorry, it's short.
I'm sure he likes that.
Dumoulin. I apologize. I'm sick, like I said. The Brian Dumoulin signing, a 6-year contract, $4.1 million AAV. Pretty significant for the Penguins. I mean, this is more than I thought he would get at this point.
They don't have a choice.
Well, this is the thing that's pretty strange, because when the two sides of the arbitration debate came out regarding Dumoulin, I think that might have been the widest disparity when it came to an amount. I mean, the Penguins, I think, offered him like 1.9, and Dumoulin was asking in the 4s. And it's like, and I mean, obviously with the contract, Dumoulin got what he was requesting, but they got, they bought years of unrestricted free agency. But yeah, I mean, he's getting paid, Jan. He's getting paid the same amount as Olli Maatta, and I don't know if he's as good a defenseman as Olli Maatta.
Yeah, but he's a lot healthier than Olli Maatta is. I mean, the problem with Maatta is how often is he not on the ice, and to me, that's a huge component of why every trade rumor you hear brought up about Pittsburgh, Maatta seems the guy that's brought up. And while he definitely probably is a more talented defenseman than Dumoulin, I really thought Dumoulin was Pittsburgh's best defenseman this year in their cup run. I really thought he played extremely well.
Best, I don't know. That's kind of.
He was fine. You want to give it to Justin Schultz? That's fine.
It was definitely Justin Schultz.
But I think Dumoulin played better than most people would have expected, and was
fair.
In 2 cup runs. And I agree. Look, I think he was overpaid by a bit. I mean, I think Ryan Wilson did a really nice job in his blog today breaking down in terms of salary and contracts and what he expected and what the expectation is. I think all of us view that he likely got overpaid, and by a healthy amount he got overpaid, but the length of the contract might be a way that they earn back some of those dollars. But I think the problem with Pittsburgh is you look at Chris Letang and he's injury prone, you look at Olli Maatta and he's also injury prone, so you have a guy in Dumoulin who's able to stay on the ice and be extremely productive, and that may have factored into the length of time they gave him on this deal.
Well, it definitely did. And see, there's something going on this year that's going to affect the Rangers in the same way. When teams get players or have players and they elevate them and move other players out before arbitration, if I'm the arbitration guy, I look at Dumoulin and say, yeah, he's got a significant role in this team. I now have to pay him the same as other players with that significant role. Like tomorrow, if you don't see that Mika Zibanejad comes to some sort of agreement, people think he's asking for a lot for 5.3, but the problem is he is going to be their number 1 center. They already traded Derek Stepan. So if I'm the arbitrator, I'm looking at this and I'm like, hey, you're now the number 1 center. I have to pay you like a number 1 center.
I'm not sure if that's going to be a factor in terms of the equation. I have to go back and look.
It seems like it could be.
Comparables are one thing you can look at. I mean, look, in my opinion, and I've written this enough, I've been saying forever, 5 years at 5.5 makes a lot of sense. We look at all the comparables. We talked about Braden Shen a couple of weeks ago. You look at what Tyler Johnson has gotten. You look what Andre Palat has gotten. You look what Thomas Tatar has gotten. In my opinion, 1 year you can get away with it, but you know you're going to pay the piper next year if he has a big year. So you want to do is you want to lock up some of that free agency. Now you could go 6 or 7, but the Rangers have always been reluctant to go that length of a deal with the guy. You look at Chris Carter last year getting 4 years. You look at some of the other deals that they've done. To go 3 years, in my opinion, is almost stupid as going 1 year, because all you've done is you bought out one unrestricted free agency year, and now you have to deal with it down the road again that you're going to lose the guy completely and not have him on your roster. So you got to go at least 4 or 5 and give him the amount of money that he wanted above what he asked for. I don't think his ask was that far out of the realm.
Well, I think for his experience in the league and for what he did, I think it is a little high. I do, because I think when you look at it, you say, hey, I need to sort of see more out of this guy, and I'm willing to pay him more, but I need to see more, because what if you give him 5 years and you do make him your number 1, and this year, Jan, and then it's obvious half season he's not that guy? Then what do you do?
Let's bring it back to Dumoulin for a second, because looking at the Penguins and looking at their defense right now, Letang is supposed to be back. He's making over $7 million. Justin Schultz on his new deal is making $5.5 million. Now you've got 2 defensemen in Dumoulin and Maatta making over $4 million. And then you've got Matt Hunwick making over $2 million, and Ian Cole, who comparatively is underpaid at 2.1.
Yep.
So I'm telling you right now, looking at their defense right now, they probably have somebody that they're going to trade. because I cannot see them spending that kind of money. You're talking 13, 20, 25 million dollars on your defense. I can't see them doing that. So maybe there's something involving Mata that they have.
Well, there have been rumors about Mata, obviously, but I think whenever I've tried to follow up a rumor about Mata, I've gotten to the same point, which is that other teams don't trust his health either. So it's not he's sort of, they know he's a great player, but they'd like to see him play a year without missing time. And then if he did that, significantly, so you knew that he was able to go, then there would be value for him at that point. But I think right now I know he's been talked about in different deals. I know at one point, the biggest rumor I followed with him was him trying to they were Pittsburgh Penguins are trying to get in on who is it?
Well, there have been rumors of they're looking for a third line center. There have been rumors about Tyler Bozak from Toronto. There have been rumors about, I know that you mentioned Duchesne down.
Yeah, Duchesne was definitely, Mata would have been included in that too. Pittsburgh,
right?
And here's the thing.
Yeah,
Dumoulin regular season had 15 points.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, that's what we're talking about. That's his production.
Well, see and that's the thing. You were looking about comparables. Talk about comparables. Now Dumoulin at 4.1 is making the same as Mata, and he's also making the same as Clefbaum and Larson in Edmonton. Brian Dumoulin got massive.
But Clefbaum's the guy who's also had injury issues in the past as well.
Yes.
I mean, that part has – look, Clefbaum clearly exceeded, I think, what even Edmonton would have expected of him last year. The problem with him has been injury. So if you're going to compare Clefbaum, you might as well compare him to Olli Mata then, because both of them have had injury concerns. But last year, Clefbaum took a major step forward.
Yeah, but I think the arbitration thing did work into where they think he will slot in.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's going to be the same thing for the Rangers, because I think they looked at Dumoulin and said, he is now slotting in as a top 4 defenseman possibly for this team, especially with injuries. I mean, that's where we now have to pay him in that pay grade.
Russ, you're talking about pairing him with a guy like a Schultz or a Letang that frees them up offensively, and he can be the stay-at-home guy. I'm just saying that based on, as a defensive defenseman, that's fine. But in terms of the pay range on defensive defensemen, the guys
Lucy and Cole, because he's going to make more than that.
Right, and that's why I'm saying, the one negative against Mata right now, or 2 negatives, is the length of the contract, which is 5. He's got 5 more years on his deal, and his injury-prone nature. If it's a question between re-signing Ian Cole or keeping Olli Mata, I think they're going to re-sign Ian Cole and try to trade Olli Mata.
Yeah, I think that's
value, his value right now, because of all the concerns, is probably at its lowest. But I do know that, and again, going back to the Toronto rumor, it makes a lot of sense, Bozak being Kessel's line mate. Olli Mata played for the London Knights, played for Mark Hunter, and it's purportedly Mark Hunter really likes Olli Mata, and there's a lot to like. It's just whether he can stay healthy.
Yeah. Olli Mata is a little bit lacking the defensive end of things, too. That's the other thing. I was looking through some of my notes here. That was the other thing that a lot of people said. And
but
we're at the point where it's funny, what qualifies as good defensively is really changing.
Yes.
It really Dumoulin is a defensive defenseman now, I guess we would say, but I still wouldn't call him really a defensive defenseman. I don't think of him as like a shutdown guy. I think he's he's like more of a, to use Stratomatic terms again, a 2 or a 3 defense, but he's good. He's good enough that they actually make it work. I think that is to me that is kind of fascinating. I do think it's funny to reunite the glory years of Bozak and Kessel in Toronto. Those were good times. They tore it up. Those teams were amazing when those guys were playing together.
There is a difference between them being the first line in Toronto and the third line in Pittsburgh.
I know. It's just always funny. I always like when teams try to reunite the Islanders defense from the mid 2000s. It's just like there's times the Flyers were doing that for a while. We talked about Andy McDonald and Mark Streit. We're like, wow, that Islanders defense was really good when they were on the island. Now here they are in Philly. That's gonna get a lot better.
Also, this is the argument we've talked a lot about, right? It's one thing that I've written a couple times. You're drawing that line between when you view you're overpaying a guy or you're taking advantage of buying out some of his unrestricted free agent years. And you look at, I mean, Edmonton clearly is the prime example. I mean, look what happened with Eberle. Look at what's happened with Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. Those are two guys where Edmonton, I think we all thought they were ridiculous for giving those contracts the amount of money they gave out. They viewed it as they were buying guys out in their unrestricted years and basically doing a wise contract signing. It's the same thing here with Dumoulin. The same thing probably happened with Oli Mata, but he only had one healthy year when they signed him to that long-term contract.
Yeah, you're right. And the one thing I'll say, though, is Rutherford, is really solid, obviously, but also has made this mistake before, which is overpaying Stanley Cup players, and it killed Carolina for a very long time, and
it did.
Right now, everything this team's won twice. They don't appear to be getting any worse. They appear to be just still on the rise. So this is a little different than Carolina, who was kind of obviously a one-hit wonder at the time.
Yeah, I mean, here's what you have to ask yourself, and this is why I think this contract's ridiculously high. Is there anybody else in the league that would pay this deal for him? I'm not sure there is.
No.
I don't think there is, but I do that sometimes does play. I mean, obviously it plays into a lot that they know that he is a shutdown, quote unquote, shutdown defenseman for them, which they desperately need because they don't rely on their defense to be defensive at all. So the few guys they have, Cole and Dumoulin, in my opinion, are the two guys that are defensive, and Letang at times, but he can even give the beautiful glorious giveaway as well. So
now
they're all suspect. I mean, none of these guys are like Luke Richardson. I mean, we're talking about like these guys are all, but they're all very good offensively too. So, I think it's. I mean, the other signing today I thought that was really kind of interesting was Austin
Watson.
Austin Watson. Okay, this is an example of the opposite. Okay, this is the example of Poyle. Like Austin Watson just played an incredible playoff and had some huge goals, right? And he was an enormous part of a team that was losing player after player after player as this in the forward as they go through. This guy really absolutely did a giant job, and he got a 3-year contract, for $3.3 million to completely. So like a $1.1 million cap hit. Yeah. So which feels right for Austin Watson, but in the past we've seen situations like this get like a $6 million deal for 3 years.
Well. And the reason is the reason is because he's had one full year in the NHL, and in that full year he had 5 goals and 12 assists. Yes, he had a great playoff, and maybe that's the precursor of him being a bigger contributor. But that's what teams are doing. If a guy has only got 1 year in the NHL and he's only scored 5 goals, you have to be an idiot as a general manager to be paying that guy $2 million. So, I mean, I'm sure that Austin Watson is very happy to be taking a one-way deal for 3 years. He's got some security. He's over $1 million. This is a good deal for him and a good deal for Nashville. But if you all of a sudden extended an offer to a guy and he's had 1 year like that, and you're giving him $2 million a year based on the fact that you think he's going to be a really good player, you're shooting yourself in the foot, especially in the cap era. So this is a big deal for both teams.
I think you also have to look at this and say there's not a massive upside for Austin Watson.
Right.
There's not.
No.
Right.
Solid third fourth liner. 3 years at 1.1. He was asking 1.4 mil a year. He gets cash certainty. The team gets cap certainty, and it's kind of a win-win for both sides because they're not overpaying him. Yet he feels he's being taken care of because they gave him 3 years as opposed to a 1 year deal and a 2-way contract.
No, that's why I say it's a really good. This is Poyle. I mean, this is what Poyle does really well. I mean, this is perfect. He set this up to a win-win situation. He doesn't screw his players over. He does, and they know that. They trust him. And yet they also, but I think what he showed in the playoffs was that he can step up to be a first or second liner at times for periods. And that's kind of enormous. I mean, that he scored some major goals. I mean, don't forget.
Well, I think the one that we should tip our hat to Poyle on is the Arvidsson deal because, I mean, okay, he got 7 years and he only got $4.25 million compared to some of the $5 million plus contracts out there. That's a steal and a half.
Is it? I don't know. We don't know that yet. We don't know that yet.
But even if it turns out that he's a 15 to 20 goal scorer, $4.25 million is not ridiculous.
You got to remember, he's not the youngest player either. I think he's 25.
I know.
Yeah, so he's 20.
And he's not the biggest player either.
He showed tremendous chemistry last year with Ryan Johansson. You're not paying him $6 million a year.
Yeah, no, Arvidsson.
Still paying him for 7 years. You know what the funny thing is again, when you go these long deals, even if it's a lower AAV, when things are getting tight, like if in 3-4 years the cap starts getting tight for them because they're competing every year, all of a sudden having to lose $4 million if you don't have a compliance buyout or a way to do it is a lot to have on your salary. Like that's the thing. It doesn't sound like much today, but when it's a part of the bigger equation, you know. So again, they jumped on it because he does have potential. He's getting paid for a lot of potential right now. He is.
But here's where Poile is laying the groundwork. But I don't think that getting an economical deal on Arvidsson and an economical deal on Watson is going to help him in the third member of the triumvirate, because Ryan Johansson wants $8 million.
Right.
And they're going to have to pay him $8 million because he's not going to take a hometown discount. He's not going to be making $6.5. He's not going to be taking a Nathan McKinnon deal. He wants to get paid. He's gone through all this with Columbus. He wants his money.
I am so hesitant to do that. I
know.
We've had this discussion before about. And I know.
But number one centers in the league act like how many?
No, Russ, you're right. And there's a certain level of this that obviously, and I talked to Kevin Allen. We had a debate about this the other day. What Johansson did was pretty remarkable in Nashville, and he's turned his career around, and he looks like he's going to be the guy there for a long time to come. He wants to be the guy there. He seems to have settled up his attitude really well. But man, oh man, he's not that far away from other issues, and to 8 years, it's just like that.
Who else do they have in their system that could be a number one center?
Yeah, look at it from the Nashville perspective.
Well, yeah. Well, unfortunately, they have a year, right, still to decide on this. They have a year.
No. He's an RFA this year.
Yeah.
Oh, he's an RFA this year. Oh, shoot, I didn't think that was true, man. I missed that one.
He's an RFA this year.
All right, that's why this really becomes
think of it this way: they gave up a linchpin franchise level defenseman in Seth Jones to get him. So now, since you've made such an investment in giving up a guy who could have been playing on your defense, on your blue line for over a decade, you have to pay this guy. And if you don't,
no, Mike. Sorry, you do not have to pay this guy because of that. I still subscribe to the old point of view that, you gave up a lot to get him,
right?
A lot to get that cap space, okay? And you're the Nashville Predators now. You've shown that people do want to play there now. This is not a place. So you can actually find a UFA out there that you can go to and and pay a lot of money to. So
you can number one center UFA. I don't know about that.
If you're gonna let Ryan Johansson walk because you think you have a chance to get John Tavares, you better think, if you have a more than a thinking feeling of being able to sign him, you have to guarantee that opportunity.
Yeah, think about that for a minute. If you're that team, you're bidding. Nashville is then going to be bidding against like the Rangers, the Islanders, some prominent Canadian team, whether it's the Canadians or someone else. Like in that equation, it's all well and good that it's a nice city to play in, but that's not going to get the deal done.
And the thing is, I understand and I get the hesitancy regarding Johansson and the long-term deal, but up until the time that he got injured, he was arguably their best player that got them
he should be their best player, though. He should be their best player,
right? But
that to me is not it's not a big. I'm not saying. See, this is the problem with his career. He was arguably Columbus's best player a lot as well, but it's not like you're not looking at two teams who are crazy with talent there. As far as high-end talent, the Predators have a great deal of talent. I'm not saying get you wrong, but as forwards, offense.
So does he?
Yeah.
What? So does he.
No, he does. He definitely does. I just, man, I know too much about the back dealings of this.
But you know what? But at the end of the day, he's producing.
Yeah, he showed. Okay, you could have gone before last year and say, okay, Ryan, show me.
Right.
Well, he showed you. He led the team in scoring, and until he got injured and was out for the rest of the year, he led the team to the Stanley Cup final. What more does he have to do to earn that long-term contract and that big money? That's what I'm saying. It's like now it's the time. You're not going to get him on another bridge deal. You have to show him the long green. And if you don't show him,
why aren't you going to get him on another bridge deal? That's my question.
Because
he's an RFA. So why don't you sit there and say?
Because you risk. Okay, if like I said, you gave up a significant asset to get him. The only way that makes sense is when you have a chance to lock that guy up, you lock him up. If you sign him to a 2-year bridge deal and you make the relationship as acrimonious as it was between Columbus and Johansson, you're burning your bridges and you're paving the way for him to be an unrestricted free agent at the end of the bridge deal. You have to commit to the guy. You traded for him. You think he's your number one center. You either commit or then what was the point of the deal if you don't?
Here's the thing.
I will take. Sorry, go ahead, Russ.
He played all 82 games. He was 54.6 on faceoffs. He had 61 points.
Yep.
So when you look at those things, who are you going? It's not really his contract year because he doesn't know he's not getting a bridge deal. So technically, that's not really his contract year. It's not his walk year.
Right.
You look at it and you say
2 years from now, 2 years, 2019, the center's available. Okay, because you're gonna have the next year besides Tavares is a really lame year for centers. Okay, but after that, you have to get to 2019. The centers available are Spezza, Duchesne, Sagan, Couture, Pavelski. You're looking at a serious group of players there that I would all rather give that kind of money to.
Okay, but here's the thing.
Hold on. But you're looking at a guy who's going to be 26 years old at that point in time. Some of those names you mentioned are older than that. And you also have to factor when you gave up Seth Jones, who you viewed as one of your best young.
I know you gave it up, but you also, like I said, I think that I wonder if this is in Poyle's. It's going to be really interesting because this is not Poyle's MO to do that. To go 8 years on Ryan Johansson right now is not in his normal way of doing things. And that is why he's been so successful at what he does. Because
I might be wrong, but I believe he qualifies. He's an unrestricted free agent, depending on the contract he signs. He qualifies to be a UFA next year, so they can get him on a 1-year deal. But then you basically pave the way for him to leave.
No, I don't give him a 1-year deal. I go pretty high on a 5-year deal. That's what I do.
But here's the thing,
because then if he does really well after those 5 years, and I lose him because he is just played out of his mind and is suddenly a young free agent, I will take 5 great years of him. Okay, I will take that because that to me is fine.
Yeah, but here's the thing: you're looking at this with like Pavelski with reputation. So Pavelski played 81 games. He had 68 points, couple more points. He was less in faceoffs, 52.4, and actually he's 0.78 points in his career per game. Right for Johansson's time in Nashville. Hold on,
number one center on the team all the time.
But you mentioned it. So for Johansson's time in Nashville, his points per game is 0.77. He's pretty much the equal or better than Pavelski, and he's younger. And you would rather have Pavelski. It makes no sense.
Do you remember last year with Johansson, by the way? Like when they first came to the Predators, it was not that great. I mean, when the trade was first made 2 years ago, right? He was not. I mean, he had a rough. It was a
I just gave you 2-year numbers for Nashville, though.
I know, but he had a really good year this year. But I'm saying that
in this era, 0.77 points per game for a center with a 54.6.
No, I'm not denying that, but I'm just saying. I mean, this is a guy who historically, just a few years ago, was all over the map and at times not even showing. Like was sent to the AHL for a playoff series.
You're going with old history. That's what you're going with.
It's only 3 years ago.
No, but
He had 63 points in 2013-14 and 71 points in 2014-15. You're going historically way back in terms of complaining about his production. Way back.
The thing
I don't know.
The thing is here. Okay, Tyler Sagan had problems in Boston. That was the only reason why a talent who was the second overall pick in the draft with as much offensive firepower as he has got traded. The same thing for Johansson. He was a fourth pick overall. He's got the physical ability. He's a big kid. He's got speed. He's got passing ability. He's got the whole package. And the only reason he was traded from Columbus was because he didn't get along with the coach, didn't get along with the organization, and they didn't want to pay him.
Yeah, but let's not deny that Sagan has done a hell of a lot better in Dallas than Johansson has in Nashville. I mean, he's been good in Nashville, but
what went wrong last year? He led the team in scoring. He led the team to the Stanley Cup final. What more does the guy have to do? That's what I'm saying. It's like
this is not just good. This is a really great year in this era. It is.
Right. And this is the thing. This is the thing. If he and I don't know who his representation is. He turns 25 next.
But I'm not representing him.
Yeah. He turns 25 next week. He signs a 5-year deal. Then at the end of that contract, he's 30 years old. In this league, 30 years old is next to dead now. So I'm telling you, if he's signing a long-term deal, he's signing 7 or 8 years. That's what he will get, one way or the other, in Nashville or in someplace else.
And as you said, Poyle's done a great job with contracts. You look at what he's signed: Arvidsson, Forsberg, Yossi, and Ellis too. It's ridiculous how much cap space he has left. Which means if you're going to overpay, and we talked about a true number one center. Johansson, I think, checks off all the boxes right now as a true number one center. This is a case where he can go above and beyond and not ruin the salary cap structure on that team.
I'm going to name you this. This is really good from Hockey Reference. So through his first 5 years, these are comparable guys to Johansson. The first one's Daryl Sittler. The second one's Dino Ciccarelli. The third one's David Krejci. And the fourth one's Bernie Federko. Mainly Hall of Famers we're talking about.
Yeah, especially the two centers, Federko.
Yeah, none of whom had any of the issues that Ryan Johansson has had.
But what issues has he had in Nashville? Nothing.
All right. I mean, I'm not going to. Yeah. I mean, I don't think
change your mind, and you're not going to change our mind. So I think we've been in a loggerhead position right now.
No, but
we are in loggerhead position. I can appreciate what you guys are saying.
Let me just say one more thing. And we know this because because Hockey Buzz has tracked Nashville for many a year.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was their main pursuit up until the time that they got Ryan?
Yeah, no question. No, I mean, I know they traded a great player to get a number one center.
Yes.
They did that. There's no question about that. That they did. Okay. And I'm not opposed to giving him a little bit more for 5 years than I would have to give him for 8 years, just to make sure that he knows exactly, that he because he played incredibly well in his year here, and he did a great job, and he did and he was playing for a contract, like you said.
42 games the year before too, so it's more than a year.
Right. No, I don't totally listen. I mean, he did play 42 games before that. Those 42 games, there were moments when there were some serious questions to his dedication in Nashville.
And to Jan's point, they can overpay him for one of two reasons. One, they budgeted for the ability to do that. Two, a certain goaltender his contract is up in a couple years. Yeah, Pekka Rinne, that's $7 million that drops off the salary cap.
Yeah, well, I don't think they won't be going after the best goalies in the world. I mean,
Saros could develop into that. I mean, there's pretty high on Saros. You don't know what he's going to develop into.
Yeah, I mean, they could. I mean, they're going to be going after the top goalies, and they'll, because for them, goalie and defense will always be the big thing. So they're going to get somebody significant in there.
Sure, I mean, I'm not disputing that, but what I'm saying is,
become that, which he might, like you said, Jan. But if he doesn't become that, they won't hesitate to put money into goaltending. They never have. That won't be an issue for them, I don't think. I mean, you never know, right? But you don't ever know. But I think anyway. Let me talk to about a less controversial issue before we move on, and that is the fact that I believe Austin Matthews will be better in the year 2035 on the all-time list than Connor McDavid. And I've talked to people about this at length. Okay, so I put out the question to everybody the other day. Do you think the year's 2035, an all-time great list has come out now? We've seen a good, I don't know what, 10 years or whatever it is. I'm bad at math. 20 years of Matthews and McDavid since they've come into the league. And who is going to rank higher on that greatest all-time list in the year 2035?
Are you talking about the
so I would hear your
list?
opinions on it, and then I'll give you why I think you're all wrong, because I think you'll all say Connor McDavid. That's my opinion, but I don't know. I'm going to start with you, Russ.
So this is in 2030. This is
2035. So this is basically their careers have played out. Okay.
So it's total points. Who's going to have more points?
No, it's who's going to rank higher if the NHL were to put out another list of greatest all-time players.
So, okay, but now, all right. So now I'm going to be at the mercy of guys ranking him instead of us looking at it like points-wise. So you're now telling me I got to get another 20 Canadian writers.
They're going to have it. Right. The championship
so
they're going to have.
You're telling me I've got to base this on like 20 Canadian writers with a bias. rather than some other way. Is that what you're telling me? I just want to know
that the Canadian writers are logical, or that at that point it's all done by computers because there's no writers left in the hockey world.
Well,
so let's start
if
there.
It's done the same way as last time. It's Connor McDavid, and there's not even a question because there's a lot of other things at play besides points. So, based on that lens, I'm going to go Connor McDavid.
Well,
okay, and those other things in play are what?
The same things that were in play for that NHL.com list that left a lot of players off because they didn't either play for Canadian teams or weren't Canadians themselves.
Okay, all right. You're taking the American, and that's a definite valid point. All right, but let's for the sake of argument say that there's an equal amount of American and Canadian writers because it's 2035. The American hockey's progressed, and we have an equal amount. So now there's no American Canadian bias anymore because that has gone away because we're 20 years from now.
Well, okay.
Take the Canadian American thing out because you're right with that part. That part is really hard to
well, then I think that the main contributing factor here has little to do with Matthews or McDavid themselves. It's the team that the organizations that they play for put around them. Yes.
Right. I'm going to take Austin Matthews because I believe he will have better players to play with.
Yes, and I mean, and you're starting off right now with what I consider a group of bad contracts on the Edmonton Oilers. I mean, they're going to pay Draisaitl, and he deserves that. But you still have Nugent Hopkins. I think Lucic within a year or two is going to be a bad contract. I think a couple of the defensemen on that team have bad contracts. I'm still not even. I'm in the minority here. I'm still not even sold on Cam Talbot. But okay, fine. He had a great year last year.
Right.
But I think that the ability of the Maple Leafs, to attract players like Edmonton has been able to do with Lucic, with McDavid, that will show in the next couple of years where players will come there to play with Matthews. I don't know if they'll take less money, but the Leafs have managed.
Well, they already have players there in the system and otherwise too there's more than could possibly play with McDavid at the moment.
Yes, I mean the Leafs have the Leafs have young players either playing with the Marlies this year or in Europe that will play probably in the NHL within 2 to 3 years, who will be contributing players, who will be good second, third line guys like Jeremy Bracco and Carl Grundstrom. And I don't see the depth of players in the Edmonton organization right now that can come up and be supplemental players with McDavid. So I think the organization in Toronto in the span of 2 years has become so much stronger than Edmonton, which is a team that, great, they hit it on the number 1 overall picks, at least some of them, but second round through 7th, they did absolutely nothing.
Well, I mean, we will say also, Mike, you would say also, is that if you look at the picks, we've been panning what Edmonton has selected early on in a couple of years, that they really smooched the pooch on it because they didn't do a particularly good job of building it. But I guess the two questions are, one, do either of them need a Stanley Cup championship to make them as being viewed as better than the other? Is that the line of demarcation? And then B, if, for example, McDavid and Matthews had come out at exactly the same year, like McDavid and Eichel, that whole argument, who would have been selected first overall? And if Matthews has a better supporting cast, but McDavid leads his team just as Matthews does that make McDavid a better player because he's leading a worse team?
Good points. I mean, I think
answer.
Yeah, no, I think that. I mean, now I put this out to the fans, okay, and 400 have responded already, and 75% of them said McDavid. Mm-hmm. That was a pretty shocking number to me because of a lot of the reasons you're saying. One, I see the team now. You do have to take into account now. It is a little bit unfair, I think, to say that I was ahead of the game that much more than Edmonton, just because of the Draisaitl factor. Okay, there is nobody on Toronto like Draisaitl. Mm-hmm. They have you can take Matthews and McDavid and almost cancel them out, but there's nobody at Draisaitl's level on.
Yeah, but how many points is McDavid going to get because of Draisaitl? Jesse Puljujarvi is going to be more.
No, that's why I think that. What I'm saying is I think that team will have success just like Toronto will have success, and part of this comes. Somebody brought up a really good point in the chat room, in the blog. And they said, what would happen? Obviously, look at Crosby and Ovechkin when they came out. Basically, this has been going on forever. And everybody now, there's no question. I had somebody yesterday, somebody said, oh, my kid's into hockey now. And he wants to know who do you think's the better player, Crosby or Ovechkin, Like, the typical text from somebody. I'm like, obviously.
Asking anymore? Like, that's
No, but this is a casual hockey
Yeah,
fan, right? This kid is just like 7 years old and is getting into hockey, and I'm like, there's no question in Crosby. You should ask. I said you should be asking me who I think's better right now, Crosby or McDavid. That's what I said, and that's how strongly I feel about McDavid.
Mm-hmm.
But if Crosby had been on Washington and Ovechkin had been on Pittsburgh, same thing about these two players. Would we be saying that Crosby is still by far the better player? I mean, the Canada Cup,
Yes.
the Canadian stuff would still be the Canadian stuff. You can't
It
change
doesn't
that.
matter. Crosby would still be by far the better player.
Crosby,
And he
Crosby
would. And I think Crosby would have won Stanley Cups with the Capitals. I think that's true. Too.
Honestly, I think the debate between McDavid and Matthews is going to be closer to who's better, Crosby or Jonathan Toews, because I think Matthews will be a bigger and better goal scorer than Toews, but that's the game that he aspires to, is the two-way game, is to be a shutdown center and to be able to score goals. And Toews won 3 Stanley Cups, and now Crosby has won 3 Stanley Cups. Now I think McDavid stylistically is closer to Gretzky because he's not a big player, but he's so fast and so creative.
But here's the thing with Matthews doesn't have a Patrick Kane yet. He's getting there where one of those guys will be that guy for him, and he already put up huge points.
Right.
Like that's where he has the edge over Toews, because he is more talented than Toews. I know people are going to be like, "Oh no, Toews is better." I'm not doubting that Toews is better.
More talented. He's got more skill.
He's more talented. He has more talent. I don't know if he'll have more points.
Right.
A lot of other things come into play.
Yeah, and what Babcock is doing in Toronto is similar to what Quenneville did in Chicago. He didn't put, every once in a while he put Kane and Toews on the same line, but Babcock is putting Mitch Marner on a different line and having Matthews play with Zach Hyman and William Nylander. And what, I don't know if it was Zach or Jan who was talking about Draisaitl. The Leafs don't have a Draisaitl right now, but if they move William Nylander to the middle, which is his natural position, he might come relatively close to being as impactful as Draisaitl as a number 2 center in Toronto.
He might, but I think you'll admit, as you said already, they have much more depth in Toronto in terms of talent base they could use. At Edmonton, you talk Draisaitl, you talk Puljujarvi. Those are the 2 guys that I mentioned. Once you get beyond that, even with Maroon there, and you said Lucic is going to drop off, and the other names they don't have the talent base, because Toronto obviously did a much better job of drafting, because you look at what happened with Eberle. They had to turn him into Ryan Strome, which in my opinion is a downgrade generically.
It was a salary dump.
Right. But we talked about Ryan Nugent-Hopkins earlier on also, where he's not worth the $6 million he's getting either. Right. So the guys they selected clearly have not, at least so far, panned out in the direction they wanted to. I'd much rather have the Marners and the Nylanders and the Broncos and the other guys coming up than what you look at Edmonton has utilized those picks for in the past.
Here's another thing you have to take into account. I think this year Matthews and McDavid will play an equal amount of games against Vegas, but I could be wrong. But as they move into expansion, if one of those teams plays an expansion team more than the other, that's going to be an awful lot of points for that star player.
No, McDavid will play 4 games against Vegas. Matthews only played 2.
It's only 2. So 2 games is a big deal against Vegas.
Vegas is in the same division as Edmonton.
Yeah, so they're in the same division. Okay.
I don't think it's a big deal because Matthews has to play against the Metropolitan Division, which I think is a lot. Which I think is No.
I mean, you're talking about 2 games against the team that he may get 4 or 5 points a game.
Yeah, but you're also talking about all the games they get to play against Vancouver and all the games they get to play against Arizona.
Nowhere near what Vegas is right now. Come on.
Then compare that to all the games you're going to have to play against the
Connor
Rangers,
McDavid will.
And the Penguins and the Flyers and the Devils are going to get better.
Those aren't easy teams to play against. You're going up against Nicholas. If you're Austin Matthews, you're going up against.
I think that's why I say that actually.
Who's the shutdown pairing on Vegas that's going to be playing against McDavid? Please tell me.
No, you're right.
Schmidt and. Yeah,
so I guess I'm making my point more so. I'm sorry. I'm on pain medication. But
I'm just giving you other factors that play into it. This is another factor.
Connor McDavid
has not just because of Vegas, but because of the other things. So McDavid is way better. Was a way easier schedule to score against than Austin Matthews.
Well, what I'm saying is Connor McDavid will be playing 10% of his games next year against Vegas and Arizona.
Yeah.
There's your 20 to 25 point gap between Matthews and McDavid.
But is that the driving factor, though? Is that really determines who's
right?
I mean,
Exactly.
You brought up Crosby and Taves, right? If you're going to go by strictly points, Crosby clearly outdid Taves in terms of production. If you're going by playoff leadership, until now you could have said Taves better than Crosby, though there was clearly an argument because, in my opinion, look at the Canadian Olympic teams. If you're going to pick one guy over the other, you're likely we're going to pick Crosby over Taves, as good as Taves has been.
Yeah, always, every time.
So where are you drawing the line on Matthews and McDavid? And it has nothing to do with points, and it shouldn't. There's
no, but it will in this kind of thing.
Ovechkin. I mean, seriously.
But Jan, what I'm saying is, I think that the 75% of the voters who voted that way were thinking of points. They were not thinking.
Because I mean, look at they gave Taves a lot of credit in that pool without the points, like to Crosby, because he is captain Canada or whatever. He is this guy. I guess that isn't officially what, but he's the Canadian guy that everybody in Canada completely loves, and you should love him because he's a great player. But like I told you, I would have kept him off that list, and not because he's a bad player, because I thought I would put Malkin above him. That's all. But that's just me personally. But I think that at the end of the day, 20 years from now, how many points they got in this couple seasons when Vegas and Arizona are terrible, but isn't going to matter that much. It's going to be what's going to matter a lot more.
It's going to matter for at least a couple of years. You're talking about 16 games he's going to play against a very bad team. That's a lot of points.
Yeah, but if he doesn't win the Stanley Cup a couple times, and if he wins 3 Stanley Cups and Austin Matthews wins 3 Stanley Cups, then those points will matter. But if Austin Matthews wins 3 Stanley Cups and he wins 1 or doesn't win any, then you're Ovechkin and Crosby in my mind. Like where Ovechkin put up bigger scoring numbers, at times, definitely more goals.
Only more goals. That's it. Nothing else was better.
Yeah, I know.
And if Ovechkin is ahead of him, it's only because Crosby has missed so much time with concussion problems.
No, agreed. I'd agree on that too.
If there's a 200 to 300 point difference between McDavid and Matthews at the end of their careers, and Matthews has 3 to 4 Stanley Cups and McDavid has 1, then I think they're going to be looked upon basically as being equal. The great equalizer is the cups. And you know what? If before this 2-year run, if you had said Taves and Crosby, I bet you would have been around 50-50. Because even though Crosby is the more talented offensive player, Taves led the Blackhawks to 3 Stanley Cups. And
there was a point 2 years ago, if you remember, where Crosby's value was plummeting. Like
it was a small window, though.
It was a small window for sure, but he wasn't putting up points. And I agree. I mean, so I do agree with you. And that was a ridiculous thing because Crosby has come back and has proven everybody wrong who would have gone after him at that point. No questions asked about that. But I do think, and the other thing that you sit back and say, okay, all right, so they're playing, and assuming that we get back to the NHLers playing in Olympics, which I think we will, and assuming that we get back to, where we have the World Cup of Hockey, we have some way that Matthews and McDavid will get to face off against each other with Team USA and Team Canada. Mm-hmm. I think it's selling. I think with this new group of USA players, this young group of USA players, I think USA Canada is going to be basically a toss up for a couple of years to come. I think it's going to get really tight.
You hope. I mean, it's not a guarantee.
But I think this is the best shot they've got at doing that.
There's something that gets lost, but there's something in the system that gets lost from the under-18s on through. The U.S. did win the World Juniors last year, but it seems to get lost in the Olympics too. It seems to skip levels instead of it going all the way through. So
I do agree with that.
Russ, we have to admit, and this is not a major criticism against him, but the Brian Burke USA Hockey model of choosing, not all your best offensive players, but choosing an actual 12-man forward group with a 3rd line checking line and a 4th line energy line. Pick your best freaking players. Pick your offensive guys.
That's never going to happen, Mike. It didn't even happen for last year's team that won.
Yeah, pick your best players.
Not going to happen
because Canada and Russia are doing exactly that. They're not.
I know, but the U.S. just won by not doing that, so which means they won't do that for another couple of years.
Yeah, and that's.
Correct me if I'm wrong too, but the World Junior thing is a little bit affected by the fact that some of the Canadian younger players are in the NHL already. Like this happens.
I mean, Matthews could have been there too. I mean, everybody's going to be affected.
Quite often, the superstar Canadian players make it quicker, or at least have in the past couple of years. They've made the quicker jump in. I mean, that's not to say obviously guys I just think that the American talent right now the young American talent right now, as was seen by that like U23 team at the World Cup, is so strong. And then players even younger than them are so strong.
But it comes down to the picking of the team more than the talent of the American players. We see the talent, but it still doesn't mean that's still not going to go.
I'm going to have faith that old group. When I was at the World Cup in Toronto, in the U.S. went down after their final game. We sat in that press room, and there was a huge feeling going around like this was the last time they would give that group a chance to do this. Like I get
that, but you go back to when the U.S. won the World Cup, and if you want to look at those players, that's the best crop of players the U.S. has ever had. They didn't produce like you're hoping these guys are going to produce. Like we just have never seen that.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's very true, and that's all really valid. You know?
And that team didn't even that 96 World Cup team. That what was it? Roenick that wasn't there, or one of the
wasn't there.
Yeah,
it was Deadmarsh and Amante was on that team, and I think Waite was on that team. Leach was on that team. Richter was between the pipes. So that was a great team.
It was a great team, but and
great players.
And I grant your point, Act, that like you see from that under 23 team, from that young guns team, you see Matthews and Eichel taking the 1-2 spots on the top two offensive lines for that team. But what I'm saying is your third line has got to have Clayton Keller on it. It's got to have Alex DeBrincat on it. It's got to have the young offensive players.
Don't forget Dylan Larson. Dylan Larson he'll be back.
Dylan Larkin. Yeah, you're right. I mean,
Dylan Larkin. Sorry, I mean he's going to be back too.
Yeah.
Look at what's coming defensively. That's an incredible group. That's like
sure, but
just in the NHL barely.
But my point is like Justin Falk doesn't get picked. Right. And Eric Johnson gets picked. So that's the problem.
I really do think in Matthews' career that ends though. I think that
I don't know about that.
I don't know.
You don't know about it, but first of all, those guys are getting old as it is. Okay, so by the time another Olympics, that could change things too. Like by the time we have another, we're 4 years from now when the Olympics actually hit. I can't imagine Brian Burke's running.
No, it won't be Eric Johnson, but it'll be the 2022 version.
Wait, you're not talking about the 2018 Olympics? Are you sure?
Pretty sure.
It's an alternate schedule.
What a load of crap! What a load of crap! I'm so sick. Can Gary Bettman just please come out and say we're not going? Shut up.
He won't do it.
And even if he does, you're going to believe him because everybody's going to think they're going to capitulate.
I believe everything Gary Bettman says. I believe every single word Gary Bettman says.
Well, you're one of them.
Wow.
You might get. I mean,
what I must say about
going back to this argument, my view on this is you talked about it, Crosby and Ovechkin. Are in 8 to 10 years, are we going to look between Matthews and McDavid and say which one of the two is more of a better leader that leads their team far enough as opposed to being a better quote unquote player? Is really more of a.
We're going to go better player because otherwise you get into the Gretzky-Messier area of leader player thing.
Yep.
Who will be ranked higher? So, Russ, you say Austin Matthews.
I'm going to say Austin Matthews.
Mike? It's a tough one for you, Mike.
Yeah, I'm
constituent base, Mike. Be careful.
This is a lose for Mike.
I'm going to say
I will give. Before you say anything, I'm going to give Mike the out on this one because it's not fair to him. All right. I will go to you, Jan.
Well, first I'm going to say, Ross, you are no longer going to be allowed past the Canadian border anymore since you took the American.
I got jacked up at the border 3 times in my career already. Like it matters.
But no, the Jan, he does play for a Canadian team, so Russ does have an out there.
No, it doesn't matter. He's
an American Border Patrol guy that you're an anonymous hockey blogger. That works really well, by the way.
Look, as a guy who's a huge Austin Matthews fan and has been for a while, I'm still going to actually take McDavid. I think McDavid doing it because of the fact that Matthews' team around him is better. I think that's going to be viewed in a much better light and play a lot more weight than one would expect.
I think it'll work against him, actually.
No, I don't think it will. I think it's going to work. If he leads a team that's viewed as lesser than the team Matthews is on in terms of the talent base, I think that's going to give him a bigger push in terms of how the perspective is versus Matthews. And again, put this way, you'd love to have either one of them. So this is kind of it's a great argument, but I don't think you can complain having either one.
These are the 2 best players since Lemieux and Gretzky in my mind. These are we're talking. I mean, these guys both surpass Crosby in my head, and that's a huge thing to say. We'll see because Crosby has just done, but skill-wise, both these guys surpass Crosby. live up to what Crosby can do, and what Crosby is the heart and everything that Crosby has shown. That's a huge factor. So I don't know, but just skill wise, these are the two most skilled players since Gretzky and Lemieux.
Here's the thing I want to see. This thing that's been talked about with Crosby a lot. Crosby has recognized early in his career everything he had a deficiency in and worked his rear end off to mitigate that deficiency. Let's see if Matthews and McDavid have the same kind of intestinal fortitude and are willing to put in the work to get to that point.
They do. They both do. I would never.
I'm not saying they don't. I'm just saying we have to.
I definitely, you know, the one thing I read in the article I'm getting a little heat for is I said that I just felt like Austin Matthews in this really short period of time has made the players around him better than McDavid has at this short period of time. And that's a really hard, I know that both have done a really good job at that, but I think,
you know what that is? I can tell you what that is. I don't know if that's a function of the player as much as the function that, hey, Austin Matthews is a much bigger, stronger guy than McDavid, and he does make more room for his other players because he's that bigger, stronger guy. That's not really saying that McDavid doesn't make anybody better. It's just that
I don't think Austin Matthews and Connor McDavid play the same type of game. I mean, I think McDavid can score, but McDavid is also a phenomenal playmaker. I think Austin Matthews is a very good playmaker, but he's a scorer. He's going to score 50 goals in this league. I don't know if Connor McDavid.
Here's my argument. What marginal NHL player was made better by Gretzky or Lemieux? So like Lemieux, for me, it was like Stefan Richer. He had 30-something goals when he never should.
Rob Brown, Warren Young, who had one big.
I mean, every year. Kevin Stevens was a good player too, but every year there was somebody.
That's what you have to look at with these two.
Russ, with Wayne Gretzky, his first year he played with Brett Callaghan and B.J. McDonald, and B.J. McDonald almost scored 50 goals, and then. I think he went to Vancouver and didn't do a damn thing. So Gretzky created chicken salad out of chicken bleep.
Yeah,
did a great job at that.
I agree.
I mean, both separated themselves that way. Finally, a little bit of this is kind of like we buried the lead, but Johnny Oduya signed a $1 million one-year deal.
And we're done.
Hang on, there's more to the story.
Yeah, no. The interesting thing here is that, first of all, it's a bonus laden contract, so he can make over $2 million with games played and playoffs and stuff like that. But what everybody assumed, and I assumed once Mathot went someplace that that would mean Thomas Chabot is immediately in the Ottawa lineup next year. I'm not 100% sure now. Now I think they're giving themselves a veteran out in case they want to have Chabot play a little bit in the American Hockey League and get more in the swing of things before.
There'll be a battle there, but I think the bigger story with this is I'm not surprised that it's a one-year deal. Like I told you, I think with the guys left, most of them are getting one-year deals, except for Markov could get two. But the thing about Oduya that's interesting is that Erik Karlsson recruited him. That's the interesting part because they're buddies.
And that played into this in a major way. And this does though take that that group that we talked about last week of Streit and Franson and all these characters. This does actually set a little bit of a bar for them that they can look at, like a 1 year, $1 million deal with maybe $2 million in bonuses. That sounds about right for a lot of them.
That's setting the bar lower than what their agents would like. I guarantee it.
Yeah, right. That's the big news about it.
Erik Karlsson recruited his own defensive partner because he's a left-hand shot. Karlsson's a right-hand shot. Oduya will be on that defensive pairing. Makes a lot of sense, and then they can keep Phaneuf and Ceci together. So for Ottawa, that adds up.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Okay. All right. So now Mike can't pick them to be worse than the league anymore.
Sure, I can, but go ahead.
Change Mike's opinion on this one. They really told me that they thought he was done. So it's going to be interesting to see. Maybe he gets revitalized in a new city.
But if he is done, they didn't spend a lot, right?
Right.
They didn't. They made the right move.
It's an immaterial.
They made the right move there.
Comparison.
Yeah.
They had to do this. They had to get another experience because they that bad last year, and people forget that how far they went and how close they are. So
I'll go this
fine.
Far. I'll go this far. Ottawa spent this on Johnny Oduya. Tampa took much more of a risk on Dan Girardi not being done than Ottawa took on Johnny Oduya not being done.
Well, that's for sure. I agree with you.
2 year, $6 million difference. Both of it, all of it's basically guaranteed. So that's and they've been panned by many, also, and probably rightfully so.
Yeah.
Gee, it must be a bunch of nerds with calculators that were doing that criticism.
This is a case of Girardi had worn out his welcome in New York too, and everybody. And I think
not in the locker room.
No. I will disagree with you because honestly,
I don't think he wore out his welcome.
If you ask a lot of people would have said they would have preferred Mark Stahl going than Girardi based upon performance last year. And I think you read the guys on my blog, the majority of them would have said Stahl over Girardi because Girardi actually gave the impression that he was putting in 100+% effort and was always willing to sacrifice his body, which wasn't the case by Stahl.
It was just the best buyout. Like, that's really the way it worked out.
It was 1 year less and saved a lot more money in terms of the buyout.
Yeah, the buyout is 4 years instead of 6.
Yep.
So you could, I mean, if
Stahl was a UFA,
6 is opposed to 8 actually.
UFA right now.
3 years left.
Right, 6-8. So what you're saying?
Mark Stahl was a UFA what?
Money.
He get decent money. He wouldn't get really good money. He would get slightly better than Girardi.
I think you get about the same. I think you get about the same, Mac. I think you get about $3 million for a short-term deal. Yeah,
maybe. I still think there's people out there who believe Mark Stahl has more of an upside.
Well, only because he's younger.
Younger, yeah.
And eye injury there. He's never been the same since the eye injury. His skating's still pretty good. Sure. His offense never came around. Like, there's a lot of things.
I agree with all those things you're saying. But I just think that, when the feeling around the league, which I think is very different than the feeling in New York when this happens. All right, we got to end there. Thanks, Jan, so much for joining us today. Thank you all for watching the Hockey Buzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com and reading all the blogs. We appreciate it. Subscription free. We're not The Athletic yet. We won't be anytime in the near future, and hopefully never will be, because we really want to keep doing what we're doing with you guys. But we're in the few, so keep supporting us. We really appreciate it. Remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey. We will talk to you tomorrow.